Have you ever exported EXR sequences out of Blender and wondered why they look so bad? Well, you're not alone, and so in today's video, we're going to be learning why that is and the entire process in order to fix this issue. Also, stay tuned for a special look at some other life-saving tips thanks to this video's sponsor, FlexiSpot, but we'll save that for a little bit later. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. You can see the video that we're going to be using today in the background. Now I went ahead and shot this footage on my iPhone, and so that is very important to notice. You do want to make sure that whatever camera you're using, you actually know some of the specs for that. We'll get into where that is important a little bit later, but I just want to point that out. That iPhone footage is shot in sRGB, and so let's just remember that. Next, we need to go ahead and convert this footage into a workable color space that we're going to be using throughout the entire visual effects process. So what I like to use is a program called Davinci Resolve. It is the main program all colorists pretty much use, and so that is what we're going to be using. Okay, so with the program open, we're going to go ahead and go up to Media Pool, and then you can just drag and drop your footage into the scene like that, and then it automatically detects the frame rate. So we'll go ahead and change that as well. And you can see we have this. We'll just drag and drop that and make a new timeline down here. So you do want to right click, go to timeline settings. And this is where you want to go ahead and change all of these settings. We're going to uncheck use project settings. Now my resolution of my video was a vertical format. And so we're going to go vertical resolution here. And then I did shoot this in 1080p, not 4K. But if you did have 4K, you can just select it right here. So that is all these settings there. We'll hit OK over here. And then we need to go to the color tab, which is just this little window down here. Now you can see the color workspace, and don't worry if this freaks you out or anything like that. We're not going to be touching a lot of settings here in this process, but I highly recommend that you guys test out some color stuff because color is such a fun thing to do inside of the visual effects process. Anyways, we have this window right here. You can see the preview over here, and we just have a default node with nothing applied to it. So what we need to go ahead and do is we need to convert this sRGB video into a linear color space that we're going to be using in the compositing process. So in order to do that, it's super easy. Inside of Davinci, we can come and click the effects mode up here. We want to come down to this color space transform. We're just going to click and drag that onto our empty node over here. And this is where we're going to be looking up here. Okay, so right up here, we have to go ahead and tell Davinci what we actually want our input color space and output color space to be. This is very important in our visual effects pipeline because we do want to be working with EXR sequences. EXR sequences are like PNG sequences, but they are in a linear color format. And so that means that we're going to have a lot more data and a lot more information. However, if we leave it in a sRGB thing like this, it'll have a hard time kind of transferring that data between each other. And so we just want to lay out the groundwork so that everything is flat in the same color space to begin off with. So anyways, as I said before, you want to make sure that you have your camera specs handy because this is where we're going to input them here in the color space and the gamma. So again, if you shoot with iPhone footage, that is going to be sRGB for both. So we'll hit S, go to sRGB for both of those. Again, this is highly dependent on your camera. Do some research about what camera settings you set. Next is the output color space. Again, we want to be working in a linear color space throughout the entire visual effects process. Now, Blender actually works in a linear Rec 709 color space, and so that is the exact same color space we're going to use in this video. So let's go. We're going to go to Rec 709 for the top, and then we're going to say linear for the bottom right there. And as you can see, it looks super ugly over here. Don't worry. This, again, is just a linear format. And so linear color spaces to our eye are never going to look the same. We're going to actually import this into Blender and change a few things there, and it'll look just fine. Okay, so now that we have that, let's exit out of here and go into the delivery tab. So that little rocket icon over there. And then once we're here, we can, of course, name it whatever we want. We'll name it like that. And then we can go instead of QuickTime, we want to be in a EXR sequence. We'll do RGBA half. We'll do DWAA right there. And one quick other thing I like to do, I like to leave this on like 4, for instance, and then each clip starts at frame 1. Just helps us along the entire process. But if you are dealing with timecode or anything like that, you might want to leave this unchecked. Okay, so now that we have that, of course, save it in a new location. You just want to go ahead and add that to the render queue, and then it should pop over here, and you want to go ahead and render all. Before we learn how to import it into Blender, I just wanted to thank today's sponsor, FlexiSpot. As a freelance visual effects artist, I'm at my desk for multiple hours every day, and having a ergonomic setup is not just a luxury, it's a must. That's why I recently upgraded my workspace to include the FlexiSpot E7 Plus standing desk and the C7 office chair, and they've made a huge difference. Now, if you've never considered a standing desk, let me tell you why you might need one. Sitting for long periods can really take a toll on your body, and even if you're working on amazing creative projects, you still need to prioritize your health. Standing desks let you alternate between sitting and standing, which helps reduce back pain, improve posture, and keep your energy up. FlexiSpot's E7 Plus does all of this, and with its 4-leg design, it's incredibly stable. I really need a stable standing desk just because stability is everything when you're working with multiple monitors and heavy equipment. You can see here just how stable it is, as it can carry me all the way up to max height, no problem. Also, it's super steady even when lifting. As you can see, it doesn't even move the water in this cup as it rises. Most 4-leg standing desks on the market are super expensive, costing thousands of dollars, but the E7 Plus frame from FlexiSpot is just $4.99. It's made with automotive grade steel and thickened legs, so it doesn't even wobble on the heaviest setups. Plus, you're covered with a 15-year warranty, and if you're not sure, FlexiSpot offers a 30-day free return policy so you can try it risk-free. And of course, the desk isn't complete without a great chair, which is where the FlexiSpot C7 office chair comes in. This chair is totally about customization and comfort. It's got a latex padded seat with a backrest that locks at a perfect 93-degree angle for posture and adaptive lumbar support. And the seat cushion is larger than most ergonomic chairs with a adjustable depth from 17 to 20 inches, so there's no need to add any extra cushion for the comfort. The chair also has a 4-level lockable backrest with a max recline of 128 degrees, 3D armrest and adjustable seat depth, and even a 3D headrest. It's designed for people from 5'7" all the way up to 6'9" and can support up to 300 pounds, making it a great fit for a wide range of body types. You also get a 10-year warranty with direct replacement for any damaged parts, so you can trust the quality. FlexiSpot provides all kinds of standing desk and ergonomic chairs to meet your needs. If you really want a stable frame for a premium use, I highly recommend the E7 Plus standing desk with its 4-legged design. And of course, for the perfect ergonomic support, the C7 office chair has you covered. So if you're ready to upgrade your workspace, be sure to use my codes on the screen now to get the best price on FlexiSpot's site. Don't miss out on these amazing Black Friday deals, so make sure to check out the links in the description below to check everything out. Trust me, you're back and your productivity will thank you. Anyways, thank you so much again to FlexiSpot for sponsoring this video, but let's go ahead and jump right back into it. Anyways, let's go ahead and go inside of Blender and learn how to actually import this in. Now, depending on what you're actually using this for, if you're using it for camera tracking, if you're using it just for background images, anything like that, the process is very, very similar right here. So let's go into the camera view. Say I want to set the background image of this camera to be the footage that we shot. So first of all, I want to go ahead and set the proper resolution. So again, for me, I'm a vertical format. So that's 1080 by 1920. So right there, I just input that number in there. And then what I want to go ahead and do, let's go to the camera properties. We'll go to background images. Again, this is just an example. You can use this for image textures, motion tracking, anything like that. It's the exact same process that we're about to go through. So let's add image. We'll go to a image right here. We'll open that up. Okay, so here's my same folder that I showed you earlier with all of my EXR sequences in. We're just going to hit A to select all those, open the image, and now you can see it's in the background of our scene. And so if we scroll down here, there are a couple information that you'll find no matter where you see this. The biggest which is being the color space linear Rec 709. And so again, that's where that information that we plugged inside of Davinci was so important, because we actually told it to export out as linear Rec 709. And so our footage actually looks corrected here. Okay, so that is all looking good. This is the point of the visual effects process. You would do all of your CGI, camera tracking, anything that you're doing in the entire process. I'll do a demo for this shot as I put some CGI in it, and so I'll be back once I have that. Anyways, as you can see, we have some CG, we have some lighting, we have some shadows, all of that stuff. We are ready to render this out to go to the compositing process. And so one quick thing I want to show you real quick is if we go over here to the render properties, but in Cycles, if you come all the way down, we can go to the color management section. And down here are some very, very important things to take note of. The one we do have to worry about, however, is view transform. And in the recent versions of Blender, we have gone from Filmic to AGX as being the kind of best quality standard. And so you might be asking what a view transform is. View transform is purely just a way that Blender transforms the linear color space to the screen so that us humans can actually understand what the colors look like. I can actually demonstrate this. If I go ahead and go to the view transform, we'll go back to raw. And as you can see, this is actually the linear color space that Blender is natively working in. I bet you guys don't really know, but Blender actually works in that linear Rec 709 color space the entire time, but all of that stuff is going on behind the scenes. And so to us, this would be a horrible way of working. Our human brains could not kind of comprehend some of the data of linear. And so that is what the view transform tries to do. It tries to transform this view into a view that us humans can see. And not that it would be totally accurate to the scene, like it looks super washed out, all of the colors are gone and everything like that, but it does give us a lot more information because, again, in this stage of the production process, we are just trying to match the CG to the footage and everything like that. We don't care that everything it looks washed out. We just want to remain in that linear Rec 709 align color space as much as possible. So I cannot stress that enough. This view transform is not actually applying any physical data to the final export. And so now for the moment that you've all been waiting for of the entire reason I built this video is actually what I just said is not correct some of the times, but also correct other times. And I'll try to explain it the best I can. I'm not a huge color nerd, and so I don't know all of the technical aspects, so please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section down below. Anyways, both of the processes are the exact same, but we now have to decide if we're going to render as PNG or if we're going to render as EXR, TIFF file, MOV, whatever you want to render out. You have to figure that out at this current stage. And why that's so important is because specific file types will actually handle the color different ways depending on what you're actually rendering out. I should have a little graphic on screen right now that will help you out, but just keep in mind file types like TIFF, PNG, JPEG, MOV files, MP4 files, all of those types of files will go ahead and apply that view transform. So if I come down here, we have a PNG file type right here. It says the color is RGBA, we have a color depth of 8, compression, all of that stuff is totally fine. If we come to the color management right now, you can see we have some more options down here. We can go ahead and try to override them if we want, but these are just the default settings. So you can see it's following the scene right now. Again, we have a view transform happening with the AGX. And so what's going to happen with these file types, the ones that go ahead and applies all this stuff, these file types will go ahead and take the AGX view transform that it's going ahead and showing you inside of Blender. So again, that is kind of this washed out color look that we have over here. It'll go ahead and automatically apply that when you're exporting out the file. And so that's why personally for years, I've always taught doing a PNG route, just because for beginners, it's so confusing to be able to not understand that AGX doesn't get applied unless you do a PNG export. And so again, that's why a lot of beginners will render out as PNG. I did it a ton in my career as well. And that is mainly because it bakes in the AGX view transform. And so I want to get you guys away from that because there are better methods to get you to a higher standard of visual effects. And so in the graphic, I'll show it up on the screen again right now. We have the other end of the thing. The biggest one is EXR sequences. And so we did an EXR sequence to render in our footage. And the big thing to know about EXR sequences is they are in a linear color space. Again, I can't stress this enough. Linear color spaces are the color space that we want to be in with visual effects. And so with linear color spaces, if I come over here, so now we're looking at the file output node. So I have to be over here. So I have the file format set to open EXR. You can see up here, RGBA, float half. Again, this is all this stuff. Codec, DWA, I find is what is the best kind of, file type to use if you want lower, file sizes, all that stuff. But we can see down here, color management, we have follow scene and then override. The override, again, so this is just the default value that is automatically set to. It is set to linear Rec 709. You might notice it's not saying anything about AGX, anything like that. And that is because it's going to render out in the same color space that we rendered out our video, and it's not going to apply the AGX view transform. And so again, that's very good for us because we want all of that extra data. But this is the point where a lot of people think that their color management is off. Something is really off with EXR sequences. And that's because the AGX view transform, again, is not applied to the output section. But that's super, super important, guys, because in the compositing process, we have to have linear Rec 709 for the CGI and footage to match as perfectly as it did inside of Blender. And so just keep that in mind. EXR sequences will typically do Rec 709. That's why we converted it inside of Davinci. And then PNG, TIFF, JPEG, MOV files will go ahead and do a sRGB color space and go ahead and apply the AGX. So hopefully that all makes sense. All that you want to know and figure out for yourself is if you want to render out CG, most times I'll do open EXR and make sure that I just have follow scene. That's totally fine. I leave everything like that. And now we can go ahead and set up all your settings, of course, but now is where we can go ahead and render the animation to get our CG passes rendered. Okay, so finally for the compositing process, this is probably the part where most of you guys are tuning in for this video of where you might have messed up. And so that is why our stuff looks so kind of weird looking if we use EXR files. It almost looks like we're in the standard view transform inside of Blender. And so how do we get this to look exactly like it did inside of Blender? Now, I'm going to be using Nuke for today's compositing tutorial, but the same concepts and things apply to Fusion, to Davinci Resolve, just in general, After Effects, any compositing program that you use, they will have a similar workflow. So it is a very important step. So you can still follow along if you're not a Nuke artist. If I actually go ahead and double click inside of here just to see some of the settings, but just know this is not linear Rec 709 that we like we had rendered out of Blender, and so that's why it's looking a little bit like that. Also, we don't have the right view transform on. We don't have AGX in the actual Nuke script, and so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and go to the color settings. Now this is different based on whatever program you're actually using. For Nuke, you just go into the little view down here and hit S on the keyboard, and that'll open up this little window right over here. And this is the project settings. This is where we can go ahead and set the resolution of our clip, all that stuff, the FPS, all that. What I'm more curious about is the section up here, the color section. You can see by default it lets Nuke kind of handle all the color things. You can see even down here you can get real granular into it if you have some 8-bit files, 16-bit log files, float files, anything like that, even raw files and stuff. You can change across the board here, or better yet, you can just double click and change it right here, on the specific clip. But anyway, if we hit S again, we can come to color. We don't want Nuke to handle it. We want to use OCIO. Basically, all you need to know is that OCIO is going to allow us to have control on what file type we can use to actually view our colors and how they actually transform within the program. And so I'm going to be using a custom OCIO file. Now, this next part might surprise you, but Blender actually uses its own OCIO file, and that is where the AGX, standard, linear, raw, all that stuff is stored. That information is stored in one file, and so if we use that exact same file with inside of Nuke, then the colors will be the exact same, and so that is exactly what we're going to do. Let's come over here and hit this little folder icon, and I've already located it. You can see it's in the program files, Blender Foundation, Blender 4 point whatever kind of version you're using, data files, and then color management. So once you're inside of that, you should see a config.ocio, and so that is the OCIO that Blender actually uses. So this is the one that we're going to use. We're going to go ahead and hit open, and that has now populated some of these things down here, and these might be familiar names to you. We have linear X709, so that is huge. We have standard workspaces, and then we also have some AGX in here, and so this is massive. This was a kind of mind-blowing moment for me. I didn't really know that Blender had an OCIO file until I started reading more into this, but now, as you can see, stuff still kind of looks weird. Why might that be? This is a Nuke specific thing, and so depending on what program you guys use, you might have to check in itself, but Nuke actually has a way to view stuff up here. Again, this is the same exact thing as a view transform, right? It's transforming just the view. In the back end of Nuke is still compositing in linear only, and so just keep that in mind. This is only for our eyes as artists to actually see the colors more accurately. So we'll go to AGX again, because we're using AGX inside of Blender. We want to be in the same AGX sRGB right up here, and so now you can see this is like the aha moment I had, right? Like everybody has problems with linear EXR sequences in Blender. That one click and it looks the exact same inside of Blender. Now, the final thing that I just wanted to quickly get out there is you can see down here below is kind of the color space that it gets inputted in as. You can see all of our EXR sequences are scene linear. Now, I find that scene linear is actually pretty good. I actually don't know if scene linear and linear Rec 709 are like different or anything. They might just be the same, but they're just named differently or something, because if I do this, nothing has changed, right? So that leads me to believe it's the exact same. But just for my sanity's sake, I like to always set this to linear Rec 709. Again, our footage, our CGI, that was all done in linear Rec 709. This is why this process is so important. And so I'm just going to, for my sanity, do linear Rec 709 for all three of these like that. Okay, so I went ahead and just threw this together, a quick composite, just to make sure everything looks a little bit accurate and stuff like that, just so we can demonstrate for this tutorial. But now we are actually ready to render it out to the next steps. Now, there are two kind of like main paths you can do for a next step. If you're going to do color correction or anything like that, then this is the method that I like doing. I like to throw this to color correction, do this in Davinci Resolve. I also highly recommend, if you're not doing any color correction, still just render it out as a EXR file. You'll see why in a little bit. But what we can do now is we can go ahead and export this out. Now, to export this out, it's super simple. You just add a right node, so W on your keyboard. There are a few things I would just wanted to point out real quickly as we transfer from Nuke to a final Davinci project. And so down here, we do have EXR file. And most important down here is look for an output transform. We just want to set it as the default linear Rec 709. And so again, not scene linear. It might be the same, might not be. I have no idea. But we just want to keep everything Rec 709 linear. And so we're basically going to be coming back full circle all the way back to Davinci, and we're going to convert it at the very end to get everything nice and tidied up. But yeah, that is the whole process, linear Rec 709. You're going to come down here and then render your animation like that, and then we'll hop on over to Davinci to finally get it back to a good color space. Okay, so here is the render that I rendered outside of Nuke. We are ready to import this into Davinci for a final kind of color process. Let's go ahead and drag this into a new timeline. Again, we have to go ahead and come into the timeline settings. We'll change this to vertical resolution. I wish Davinci automatically selected that, but that is besides the point. Here is, again, our ugly kind of color profile that everybody is so scared of. But again, this is in linear Rec 709. We rendered linear Rec 709 outside of Nuke, and so we need to go ahead and convert it into a sRGB color space that is very typical if you're using Instagram, YouTube, anything like that. Vice versa, you can also use like Rec 709 is a very common thing for like films and stuff like that. So depending on what your final export is going to be, you might need to know that information. But we'll come to the color tab. Again, we want to be using this color space transform, so we'll drag and drop that onto there. The input and the output are going to be different now. And so if you think about the whole process as we go, we rendered a linear Rec 709 outside of Nuke, and so that needs to be our input. So I'll go ahead and do linear Rec 709, so Rec 709 there, and then linear down here. So now you can see it's a nicer color space. And then down here, I typically just render as sRGB. I find online that's typically what most things look good in, you know, for like an iPhone video. If you're shown on Instagram, on YouTube, anything like that, I typically just do sRGB for online stuff. So as you can see, everything is looking pretty natural over here. There is still some like kind of clipping and stuff happening. And so this is another step that was so confusing for me as an artist when I was dealing with this, because I thought I would do everything right. You know, literally everything was correct. I would go from sRGB to linear back to sRGB, all that stuff. Actually, quick shout out to Jacob from Inline VFX. They recently just had a Blender conference short where they went over this entire process, and he actually uses this as well. And so big shout out. I have his link in the video description if you want to check his out. He does a much better job of going over all the technical aspects that unfortunately I don't really know. So definitely go ahead and give Jacob a shout out right there. Tell him I sent you. Jacob to Jacob. Awesome. But the thing that we have to do down there is we have to go in this tone mapping section. Tone mapping method we're going to leave on default, just Davinci. Now this technically isn't the most accurate way to do it, but unfortunately at the moment I don't know of any better way to do it inside of Blender. So your video is not going to be one-to-one, but it's going to be pretty darn close to how you saw it inside of you know, Blender, for example. So we'll go down here, go to use custom max input, and we're going to check that and set this all the way up to the max. And so as you can see, now this is exactly what we saw inside of Blender. This is the kind of washed out AGX view. That is the unfortunate thing about this entire process, is it does kind of apply that AGX-y look to it. And so everything's a little bit washed out. It almost looks a little bit like a this footage was shot on log and stuff like that. So just keep that in mind, that unfortunately with the Blender workflow as of now, we have to, we can't do it one-to-one of how we actually shot it. Now the process would be is to actually add some color correction. So we'll go ahead, Alt S to add that. You can do any sort of color correction. I'll just give some example. We'll make the saturation up higher, the contrast will boost up a little bit, and then raise some of these levels. You know, that might be too much, but again, that's we're just demonstrating right here. But yeah, as you can see, this is where you can go in that color kind of process. Maybe the sky is a little too blue, and so I'll bring that down, something like that. And so yeah, that is the entire thing. You can spend all day color correcting. You know, and color is one of the most important things in my opinion to make your shot look as good as possible. And so that is what I wanted to bring to this video, to show why it's so important to the you know, get the right color management throughout the entire process so that we can have flexibility in this stage. This is the final thing. You know, this is the color that we'd be rendering to Instagram. And so, you know, do all of that stuff again. We are converting, you know, if you remember all the way back to step one, we converted from sRGB, which is what I shot in, all the way to linear Rec 709, and then we converted all the way back to that at the very end. And so it's a huge circle, just think of it like that, and will lead to some really cool results, as you can see here. I really hope this video has answered a ton of questions that you might have about color management and the entire workflow that we use inside of visual effects. Totally feel free to mess around with it. Find what works for you is what I say all the time, because what works for me might not work for you. And so definitely make sure to experiment. But most important thing is just don't be scared about the color management process. It's a very rewarding process if you get it right, and can lead to a really good artwork. Anyways, I just want to say a massive thank you to the FlexiSpot team for sponsoring this video. Link is down below if you want to check out the desk and chair that I featured in this video, but I can't thank them enough. Thanks so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next video.